The door to the conference hall on the top floor of the Century Group building was suddenly pulled open from the inside. Lin Qian had barely stepped halfway in her high heels, and before she could even raise her usual condescending smile, an aged yet penetrating voice slapped her hard across the face like a resounding blow. Roll. Just one word. Lin Qian's high heels left a half mark on the carpet before she abruptly stopped. She even doubted if she had misheard. Her carefully drawn eyeliner lifted slightly as she looked towards the source of the sound, at the head of the table. Zhao Tianyu, the newly appointed chairman who had suddenly appeared 3 days ago with a mysterious background, was slamming his cane heavily on the ground. The sound was calm, yet it sent shivers down one's spine. Chairman Zhao, what do you mean by this? Lin Qianxiang suppressed the anger in her heart, her fingertips digging into the leather of her Birkin bag, trying her best to maintain the dignity of a CEO. I am the CEO of the group and hold shares. I have an obligation to attend today's shareholders meeting. Zhao Tianyu scoffed as if he had heard the biggest joke in the world. Without even raising his eyelids, he instructed the recorder beside him. Write this down. Former CEO Lin Qian was 5 minutes late without cause, disrupted the meeting order, and refused to obey the meeting management. Late without a reason? Lin Qian laughed angrily, her voice rising 8 octaves. I just chaired the board meeting yesterday. Who gave you the right to pull these kinds of dirty tricks behind my back? Don't forget, I'm the one who covered the group's 200 million yuan working capital shortfall in the first half of the year. I'm the one who secured that 300 million yuan project in the east of the city. What right do you have to tell me to get out? Based on this, Zhao Tianyu slowly pulled a piece of paper from the pile of heavy documents beside him, flicked his wrist, and the paper glided to Lin Qian's feet. Lin Qian bent down to pick it up, and after just one glance, her pupils suddenly contracted to the size of pinpoints. It was a share transfer agreement. The transferor's name was clearly written as Lin Qian's, and the transferee's name was an abbreviation of an offshore company that was completely unfamiliar to her, yet vaguely jarring, SC Holding. The signing date was yesterday. That is, the day before she dragged Shen Xiai to complete the divorce proceedings. Forgery. This is absolutely forgery. Lin Qian's voice began to tremble. She suddenly looked up, her gaze sweeping across the room like a knife. Those executives who were usually obsequious to her were now all speechless, keeping their eyes down and not daring to meet her gaze. My seal and signature are in my hands. This is illegal forgery. Forgery? Zhao Tianyu finally raised his eyelids, his cloudy old eyes full of mockery. Lin Qian, do you really think this group is your Lin family's backyard? Aren't your seals and signatures still in your ex-husband's hands? Ex-husband. These 2 words struck Lin Qian like a thunderbolt, leaving her utterly stunned. She abruptly turned her head, her gaze sweeping across the long table, fixing on the figure in the corner that she had been ignoring. It was Shen Xiai. He was wearing a slightly faded gray suit, sitting at the very end, almost invisible, a pen in his hand, casually scribbling something in his notebook. How did he end up here? Before leaving home this morning, she specifically checked the list of attendees, and Shen Xi's name was nowhere to be found. What right does this good-for-nothing, whom she despised and swept out like trash, have to sit here? Shen Xiai? Lin Qian almost screamed, her voice sharp like metal scraping against glass. It's you. You're the one who did this, aren't you? You're a spineless gigolo. What can you do besides write a few lousy characters? You forged documents. That's illegal. What right do you have to sit here? Shen Xiai, who had been engrossed in writing, finally stopped. He slowly raised his head, his movements incredibly elegant. First, he took off his black-rimmed glasses, then leisurely wiped the lenses with the corner of his shirt before putting them back on. Throughout the entire process, he didn't glance at Lin Qian once, as if she were nothing more than a noisy fly. Only after putting on his glasses did he slightly turn his head, his gaze passing through the long table, past the silent executives, and landing precisely on Lin Qian's face, which was distorted by anger and fear. Qualifications? Shen Xiai spoke. His voice was not loud, even somewhat gentle. Yet strangely, it overpowered all the noise in the conference hall, clearly reaching everyone's ears. He ignored Lin Qian and instead looked at Zhao Tianyu, his tone as calm as if discussing the weather. Chairman Zhao, according to the agenda, shouldn't we announce the next item? The mockery on Zhao Tianyu's face vanished instantly, replaced by an almost respectful seriousness. He nodded, ignoring Lin Qian at his feet, and turned to the crowd, his voice loud and clear, with the authorization of the group's actual controller. The latest personnel appointment and dismissal decisions are hereby announced. Lin Qian is dismissed from all positions. Effective immediately, Lin Qian swayed, and the share transfer agreement in her hand fluttered to the ground. At the same time, Zhao Tianyu paused, his gaze as if he were reading a death sentence. Appointing. The air in the entire conference hall seemed to have been sucked out, and everyone held their breath. Mr. Shinsiai is the new CEO of Century Group. Boom. Even the highest-grade soundproof glass seemed poised to shatter from this invisible shockwave. The executives exchanged bewildered glances, their eyes nearly popping out of their sockets. The same Shinsiai who always followed Lin Qian around, only ever taking notes in meetings, barely daring to breathe. The same Shinsiai whom Lin Qian called a good-for-nothing, a son-in-law who had married into the family. The CEO? In the deathly silence, Shinsiai calmly stood up. He straightened his slightly oversized cuffs and strode forward. He didn't walk towards the deputy seat that belonged to the CEO, but went straight to the main seat, the seat that represented the highest power in the group. Wherever he went, the executives instinctively stood up and made way for him, as if they were facing a king inspecting his territory. Lin Qian stood frozen in place, watching helplessly as Shinsiai walked past her. That familiar, gentle, scholarly air that belonged to him now felt like the most biting irony. She tried to reach out and tug at his sleeve, but found her arm too stiff to lift. Shinsi's steps did not falter in the slightest, nor did he even spare her a glance. Only after he sat down in the main seat, his body sinking into the Italian-imported genuine leather chair, did he lower his eyes slightly and glance at the distraught Lin Qian at his feet. Article 7 of the divorce agreement, Item 3 of the supplementary clauses, is clearly stated. Shinsi's voice fell from above, cold as ice. After the property division is completed, you will no longer hold any equity in the group. As for the 200 million and the Chengdong project you just mentioned, he chuckled softly. A cold laugh. I forgot to tell you. That 200 million in bridge financing came from South Carolina Holding, and the land approval for the East City project was also submitted by someone I had done. Lin Qian, your proud achievements are nothing more than working for me. Lin Qian felt a metallic sweetness rise in her throat, and her vision went black. She had always thought that she was capable and that she was the one holding the family together. But it turned out, she was just a monkey, jumping around in front of Shinsiai, the mastermind behind everything. No, it can't be. She shook her head, staggered backward, and bumped into the cold corner of the table. Shinsiai, you're lying to me. You're clearly a penniless wretch. Your parents died long ago. Where did you get the money? You have no right to. Qualifications? Shinsiai repeated the word, finally fixing his gaze entirely on her face. Those eyes were no longer the timidity and forbearance she was familiar with, but rather a bottomless, icy pool. SC Holding is a family trust established by my mother 18 years ago. Century Group is a family business founded by my maternal grandfather and taken over by my mother. Shinsiai spoke slowly and deliberately, as if peeling an onion, layer by layer revealing Lin Qian's disguise and her greedy heart. I didn't want to get involved before because I felt it was unnecessary. A woman who can't even figure out her own place isn't worth my time. Unfortunately, not only do you not understand your own place, but you also dare to reach for my mother's shares. Lin Qian slumped to the ground, her expensive stockings torn, her delicate makeup smudged by cold sweat, turning into an ugly mask. She recalled yesterday at the Civil Affairs Bureau, when she arrogantly shoved a pen into Shinsi's hand, mocking him, "Sign it, so it won't get in my way. Don't ever say I know you again. You're not worthy." It turns out that she had already lost from that moment on. Lost utterly worthless. Take them away. Shinsiai withdrew his gaze, as if looking at them for even a moment would offend his eyes. He waved to the two staff members waiting at the door, saying that since they were neither shareholders nor senior executives, there was no need for them to stay and get in the way. Shinsiai, you can't do this to me. Lin Qian was being dragged out by two men, struggling desperately, her voice piercingly. I'm your wife. I'm your wife. We were husband and wife yesterday. Shinsiai, look back at me. If you forgive me, I'll give you anything. I'll give you back the shares. I won't be CEO anymore. I beg you. Shin Si leaned back in his chair, his fingers tapping lightly on the armrest. Only when the doors to the conference hall slammed shut again, shutting out the hysterical cries outside, did he slowly speak. His voice was soft, but enough to be etched in the memory of everyone present for a lifetime. In the past, he said calmly, that relationship ended yesterday. Now, you are the suspect. Lin Qian. Once the meeting room door closed, the oppressive atmosphere inside seemed to solidify into a tangible form. The executives sat bolt upright, even their breathing becoming slightly shallower. What they had just witnessed was more thrilling than any business action movie. Lin Qian, usually so decisive and authoritative, had been dragged out like a rag doll, and Shin Si, whom they had always treated as invisible, now sat in the main seat, symbolizing supreme power, his gaze sweeping over them indifferently. Continue. Shin Si spoke, breaking the suffocating silence. The CFO, his palms sweating, clutched the financial statements. He forced himself to stand up. President Shun, regarding the subsequent fund disbursements for the Chengdong project. Lin Qian previously instructed that they be postponed. Should we proceed as originally planned now? Pause. Shin Si interrupted him without even looking up, her gaze fixed on the financial statements in front of her. All expenditures were to be re-audited. Every document bearing Lin Qian's and Chun Mingda's signatures was to be reviewed 3 times. I want a detailed audit report on my desk within 3 days. Yes. Yes, the CFO quickly agreed, his back already soaked with sweat when he sat back down. Shin Si then looked at the general counsel. How far have you gotten in collecting information about Lin Qian's illegal operations during her tenure? The legal director quickly stood up and opened the folder in his hand. President Shun, the preliminary chain of evidence has been established. There are 4 main points. First, last October, Lin Qian misappropriated 80 million yuan from the subsidiary's accounts and transferred it to her anonymous personal account at Credit Suisse, under the initials LQ, for the purchase of financial products and luxury goods. Second, during the bidding process for the Chengdong land plot, she accepted bribes totaling 12 million yuan from the bidding party, Huawei Real Estate, and leaked the group's internal reserve price, causing the group to overpay nearly 50 million yuan in land premium. Third, the general counsel paused slightly at this point, glancing at Chun Mingda, Lin Qian's lover and trusted vice president, who was sitting in the corner with a deathly pale face. He said, I have only one word in my reply. Third, the transfer of marital property during the marriage. A week before the divorce, Lin Qian transferred multiple properties and securities under her name to her mother's name in batches, suspected of maliciously concealing assets. Fourth, the general counsel took a deep breath. Regarding Lin Qian's improper relationship with Mr. Chun Mingda, we have hotel surveillance records, room booking records, and some private audio recordings recovered from Lin Qian's cloud storage, totaling 17 clips. With each line read aloud, Chun Mingda lowered his head further, until finally it was almost buried in his crotch. The conference room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone could feel the silent killing intent emanating from Shin Si. The audio recording finally caught Shin Si's attention. His gaze swept over the crowd and landed on Chun Mingda. Let everyone listen to what business our group's vice president and former CEO usually discuss. Chun Mingda slid off his chair with a thud and knelt on the ground. President Shun, I was wrong. I was forced by Lin Qian. She threatened my family's safety. He let go. Shin Si remained unmoved. The recorder operated the computer, and a few seconds later, a seductive female voice came from the speakers. It was Lin Qian. That the old man is dying. Once he transfers the shares to me, we'll sell this mess and settle down in Switzerland. That Shin Si is a good-for-nothing. The only thing worth looking at is his face. Once we get the money, we'll just give him some settling-in allowance and send him on his way. The recording wasn't long, but it was enough to send chills down the spines of everyone present. It turned out that behind their backs, this adulterous couple had already treated the company like a piece of Tang Sanzang's flesh. And even Chairman Zhao, who had given them a hard time as soon as he took office, was referred to by Lin Qian as an old bastard. After the recording finished playing, Chun Mingda collapsed to the ground, his face ashen. Mingda. Shen Xi's voice remained steady, yet it carried a chilling undertone. The company has treated you well. 3 years ago, you embezzled company funds to pay off gambling debts, and Lin Qian suppressed it. You think I didn't know? I'm keeping you around to see just how stupid you can get. Mingda trembled like a leaf, unable to even utter a word of begging for mercy. Chairman Zhao. Shen Xi looked at Zhao Tianyu and asked, according to the regulations, how should we deal with this kind of traitorous parasite? Zhao Tianyu remained expressionless, the veins on his hand gripping his cane bulging. Immediately transfer him to the legal department to cooperate with the investigation. Meanwhile, the group reserves the right to file criminal and civil lawsuits against all involved personnel. Furthermore, notify relevant departments to completely ban Chun Mingda from practicing in the industry. No, Shen Xi, Chairman Zhao, spare me. I still have a wife and children. Chen Mingdao was dragged out by 2 security guards, his screams echoing in the corridor. Lin Qian's remaining forces were completely wiped out at this moment. After dealing with Chun Mingda, Shen Xi's gaze swept across the room again. I know that everyone here has, to some extent, had dealings with Lin Qian, whether it was forced or voluntary. I'm giving you 3 days. Within 3 days, voluntarily go to the legal department to confess and return any illegal gains. And I can let bygones be bygones. If my people find out. He paused, then tapped his finger lightly on the table. Then it's not as simple as just returning the money. You choose whether to go to jail to reflect on your actions or continue earning a high salary here. Everyone fell silent, nodding in agreement. After the meeting ended, the crowd dispersed in silence and quickly. Zhao Tianyu, however, did not leave. He waited until everyone had left before rising from his seat, walking to Shen Xi's side, and handing him a seemingly ordinary black fountain pen. You acted well, Zhao Tianyu said, a hint of appreciation in his voice. Shen Xi took the pen. Twirling it between his fingers, the pen looked remarkably harmonious on his slender fingers. It's nothing. Thank you for your trouble, uncle. Zhao Tianyu sighed and sat down on the chair next to him. If your mother knew that you'd left the company to this kind of woman for 3 years, she'd probably be furious. But you've kept it well hidden. You even fooled this old man. I don't want to cause trouble, Shen Xi said calmly, glancing at the bustling city view outside the window. After her mother's death, the Lin family swarmed around her like flies drawn to fish. If I took over directly, I'd inevitably become the target of everyone's criticism. It's better to keep a low profile and watch them perform. Unfortunately, Lin Qian was too hasty that she not only wanted to monopolize it, but also wanted to kick me out. What do we do now? Should we really ruin her? Zhao Tianyu asked. After all, they were husband and wife. Shen Xi turned his head, his eyes devoid of any emotion. Uncle, the business world is like a battlefield that you can't be soft-hearted. Besides, she's never treated me like a husband. When she looks at me, all she sees is her exploitative value and contempt. She's using my mother's shares, sleeping in my competitor's bed, and still thinking about getting rid of this eyesore of a good-for-nothing like me. If I don't fight back, I'll be sitting here today, being slaughtered. Zhao Tianyu was silent for a moment, then nodded. All right, let's nip it in the bud to prevent future trouble. However, with Lin Qian's personality, she probably won't stay quiet once she's in jail. She can't turn the tables. Shen Xi stood up, straightened his suit, and the entire chain of evidence was now closed. The 80 million she embezzled had already been returned to the overseas account to cover the group's losses. Now, she truly owes me money. I will file a civil suit attached to the criminal case, demanding full compensation. As for her time in prison, that depends on how cooperative she is. On the other side, Lin Qian was being held in a temporary detention room on the first floor of the company building. This room was originally used to store important supplies that IT had no windows and only a dim incandescent light. At first, she was screaming, banging on the door, and yelling that she wanted to see a lawyer and sue Shen Xi for illegal detention. But as time went on, the deathly silence around her engulfed her like a tide, and fear began to creep up from the soles of her feet. A few hours later, the door opened. 2 men in uniform entered and slammed a document onto the table with expressionless faces. Lin Qian, this is the asset freeze notice and the criminal case filing notice. Please sign, one of them said coldly. Lin Qian stared at the document. her hands trembling as if she had Parkinson's. I won't sign. I want to see Shen Ci. I want to see a lawyer. This is illegal. Mr. Shen said you'll have to figure out your own legal fees. The man smiled sarcastically. As for seeing him, Mr. Shen is too busy to see you. He asked me to pass on a message. Think carefully about those 80 million. Besides your Credit Suisse account, what other related accounts are involved? Thinking it through will help with your sentencing. Lin Qian slumped completely into her chair. Only at this moment did she truly realize that Shen Ci wasn't bluffing. He was serious. He didn't want a divorce, that he wanted to ruin her life. I want to see Shen Ci, she murmured to herself, tears mingling with snot streaming down her face. Please, let me see him. I'll do anything if he'll let me go. However, the only response she received was the dull thud of the iron gate closing. In this dimly lit room, Lin Qian finally remembered Shen Ci's good qualities. She remembered how he always silently took care of all the trivial matters for her, how he cared for her when she was sick, and how he never talked back even when she scolded him mercilessly. But those memories now felt like knives cutting into her heart. She pushed aside a mountain of gold, but instead embraced a stone called vanity. Now, the stone is shattered, and the mountain of gold reveals its sharp edges, ready to crush her into dust. Shen Ci, Shen Ci, you heartless devil. She curled up in the corner, crying her heart out. But she could no longer get even the slightest bit of pity from that man. At 2 a.m., only the top floor of the Century Group building was still lit. Shen Ci sat behind that large desk, and in front of her was not a financial report, but a thick file. The cover bore the name Lin Qian in gold lettering, and inside were all the evidence of how she had used her CEO power to gradually erode the foundation of the group over the past 3 years. There was a gentle knock on the office door. He went in. Shen Ci didn't even look up. The man who entered was Zhao Tianyu's assistant, a shrewd and capable man in his 30s, surnamed Liu. Assistant Liu placed a cup of hot coffee on the corner of the table and said in a low voice, President Shen, Lin Qian has completely caused a scene. She's been banging her head against the wall in the detention room, scraping her forehead, and insists on seeing you. The guards asked me what to do. Shen Ci finally raised his head, took off his glasses, and pinched the bridge of his nose. The light cast deep shadows on his face, making him look somewhat tired, but his eyes were surprisingly bright. Give her a mirror. Shen Ci's voice was somewhat hoarse, yet it carried an undeniable coldness. Let her see how she looks now. Then tell her that if she dares to hurt herself even a little more, I'll make her wish she were dead inside. She loves to be pretty, doesn't she? Then let her wait for judgment. Clean and beautiful. Yes, Assistant Liu agreed, hesitated for a moment, and then added, also, there's some movement from the Lin family. Lin Qian's mother suffered a brain hemorrhage after hearing that her daughter had been arrested and is currently in the hospital undergoing emergency treatment. Lin Qian's younger brother, Lin Feng, is leading a group of people towards the company, seemingly intending to cause trouble. Shen Ci's lips curled into a cold smile. They finally couldn't sit still anymore. These bloodsuckers, who usually hide behind Lin Qian and enjoy their luxuries, are now feeling the pain and want to come out and bite. Should we notify the security department to stop them? No need. Shen Ci put his glasses back on, his gaze returning to the case files. And let them in. Perfect. I also want to see what else the Lin family has left besides greed and incompetence. Also, notify the legal department to prepare the litigation materials for the Lin family's illegal guarantees and embezzlement of funds. With old Madame Lin gone, it's time to settle this score. Understood. A hint of admiration flashed in Assistant Liu's eyes. Shen Ci wasn't on the defensive. He was luring the enemy out to catch them all in one fell swoop. Half an hour later, a noisy commotion came from the lobby on the first floor of the group. Get out of my way. Get out of my way. My sister is your CEO? You dare to stop me? Believe me or not, I'll get my sister to fire you. Lin Feng's voice was sharp and arrogant, reeking of alcohol. Behind him were 5 or 6 slovenly thugs, clearly not respectable people. The lobby manager nervously stopped him. Mr. Lin, please calm down. It's after get-off work hours now, and President Shen is already resting. Rest my ass. Lin Feng shoved the manager aside, pointing his finger at him and yelling, my sister is missing, and I can't get through to her on the phone. You bastards must have framed her. If you don't hand my sister over today, I'll tear this lousy building down. The noise traveled up the elevator to the top floor. Shinsi's office door was wide open, and he remained seated there, seemingly oblivious to the commotion outside. Lin Feng stormed in with his men, and when he saw Shinsi, he paused for a moment, then became even more arrogant. "Oh, isn't this my good-for-nothing brother-in-law? What? You've climbed into my sister's place? Get down here right now, or I'll break your legs." Shinsi slowly put down the pen in her hand and looked up at Lin Feng. Her gaze was calm and unwavering, yet it sent a chill down Lin Feng's spine for no apparent reason. "Who gave you the audacity to act so wildly here?" Shinsi spoke, his voice not loud, but like a bucket of ice water, extinguishing Lin Feng's arrogance. "I'm acting wildly." Lin Feng snapped out of his daze, his neck stiff as he roared. "Shinsi, don't think you're something special just because you're wearing a suit. You're nothing but my sister's dog. Now that the dog's taken over the kennel, you won't even let the owner in? Let my sister go right now, or I'll call the police." "Call the police?" Shinsi chuckled, took a voice recorder from the drawer, and pressed the play button. The voice coming from inside was the same one Lin Feng had been shouting in the lobby. "My sister is your son, or I'll tear down this lousy building and break your legs." Shinsi turned off the recorder, his gaze sharp as a knife. "Trespassing on office premises. Verbal threats. Suspected of disorderly conduct. Lin Feng, do you think this is your Lin family's backyard? Do I need to remind you? Your sister, Lin Qian, is no longer the CEO, that she's a criminal suspect. And you, leading a group of thugs to storm the company headquarters. This is no longer a simple civil dispute." Lin Feng's face paled, but relying on the number of people around him, he still forced a smile. You're trying to scare me. My mother is still in the hospital. If you push me too far, my mother and I will kill ourselves. And then we'll see if your company has any shame left. It seems you really don't know." Shinsi stood up, walked around the desk, and approached Lin Feng step by step. "Your mother fell ill because those 3 shell companies under the Lin family's name illegally guaranteed loans using the group's credit, causing the bank to withdraw loans and the cash flow to break down. She suffered a cerebral hemorrhage when she received the bank's demand for payment, and that money had already been transferred overseas by you and Lin Qian for extravagant spending." "You're talking nonsense," Lin Feng roared, but his voice lacked conviction. "Whether it's nonsense or not, let the evidence speak for itself." Shinsi winked at his assistant, Lu, behind him. Assistant Lu immediately handed over a stack of documents and threw them at Lin Feng's face. The documents were scattered all over the floor, clearly listing transfer records, guarantee contracts, and records of Lin Feng's extravagant spending at overseas casinos. This is impossible." Lin Feng's legs began to go weak as he looked at the familiar signatures and numbers. "Nothing is impossible." Shinsi looked down at him, his tone indifferent as if delivering a verdict. "Lin Qian is in jail, and the Lin family is finished. You have 2 choices. First, get out now and quietly wait for the court summons. Maybe I'll spare your mother's life if I'm in a good mood. Second, continue causing trouble here, and I'll call the Economic Crime Investigation Department right now to invite you in for tea. And while we're at it, have your mother taken out of the ICU so she can watch you being handcuffed and taken away." Lin Feng completely broke down, looking into Shun Si's emotionless eyes. He finally realized that the useless brother-in-law he used to boss around was no longer the same person. This was a behemoth that he could not shake at all. I'm leaving right now." Lin Feng trembled, turned around, and was about to run away, but was stopped by Shinsi, etc. Lin Feng stood frozen in place, not daring to turn around. "Pick up these documents and take them with you." Shinsi's voice was chillingly cold. "This is the price your Lin family pays for their greed. Go back and tell your father that if he wants to enjoy his old age in peace, he'd better watch what you say. Otherwise, he'll be the next one to go in and join Lin Qian." Lin Feng scrambled to pick up the documents from the ground and, along with the group of thugs, fled the office in a disheveled state. The noise subsided, and the office returned to its deathly silence. Assistant Lu stepped forward and asked in a low voice, "President Shin, are we just going to let them go like this? Should we take this opportunity to shake up the Lin family's foundation?" "No rush." Shinsi sat back down in his chair, his gaze deep and unfathomable. The Lin family was already a sinking ship. The slightest storm would sink it. To move against them now would be too easy on them. I wanted to watch them tear each other apart on this ship. To watch them helplessly watch their fortune evaporate bit by bit. That would be the most painful punishment. He paused, his tone softening slightly. Also, arrange for the best doctor to go to old Mrs. Lin's hospital. Remember, remain anonymous. The expenses will be paid from my personal account. Whatever the Lin family did, the old lady is innocent. I don't want to be branded as unfilial. Yes, Mr. Shun, you are merciful, Assistant Lu said sincerely. He knew that Shin Si was leaving the Lin family with a last shred of dignity, and also accumulating good karma for himself. Mercy? Shin Si shook his head, looking at the dark night sky outside the window. I've been merciful enough to them. If they know what's good for them, perhaps they can be spared. If they don't, a fierce glint flashed in his eyes. Then don't blame me for being ruthless. In the following days, one piece of bad news after another hit the Lin family. First, the bank sued a company under the Lin family for loan fraud and froze all its assets. Then, Lin Qian's cronies and business partners turned against her, fearing being implicated, and rushed to expose the Lin family's crimes. Lin Feng's high-interest loans also came due, and those people blocked the Lin family's door every day, throwing paint and smashing windows. Overwhelmed by the burden, Lin's father suffered a sudden heart attack and was hospitalized. The once prosperous Lin family, which had enjoyed great success in the area, collapsed overnight. Lin Qian, after learning all this in the detention center, went completely insane. She stopped crying and making a fuss, but just sat in the corner all day with her knees drawn up to her chest, constantly muttering, Shin Si, I'm your wife. How could you do this to me? How could you? Even the police officers guarding her felt sorry for her and whispered among themselves. Lin Qian used to be so powerful. Who would have thought she'd end up like this? I heard her ex-husband is ruthless. He's trying to uproot the Lin family. Lin Qian heard this, but just laughed blankly, tears streaming down her cheeks, wetting her rough prison uniform. She finally understood that Shin Si wasn't without hatred. He simply hid it deep within. He wouldn't act unless absolutely necessary. But once he did, he would ensure her and her entire family's utter destruction. That day, Shin Si finally agreed to meet Lin Qian. In the meeting room, separated by thick glass, Lin Qian looked at the man in a suit and tie, with an extraordinary air about him, as if she were in another world. Shin Si. She picked up the microphone with trembling hands. Her voice so hoarse it was almost inaudible. I was wrong. I was really wrong. Please, please let my parents go. They're getting old. My dad, he can't take it. Shin Si looked at her, his eyes showing neither disgust nor pity, only a deathly indifference. Lin Qian, now you know to beg me? He said calmly. When you emptied the company, when you were lying under another man's body, when you forced me to sign the divorce papers, did you not think about your parents' reputation? Did you not think about my feelings? I was out of my mind back then. I was deceived by Chen Mingdao. Shin Si, please, for the sake of our 3 years of marriage, save my parents. I don't want anything anymore. Shares, money, status. I'll give them all to you. I just beg you to let them go. Lin Qian pleaded incoherently, her forehead pressed against the glass, making a dull thud. It's too late. Shin Si's voice was flat and emotionless. The Lin family has come to this point not because of me, but because of your own greed and stupidity. Your father indulged your reckless behavior. Your mother was greedy for pleasure. Your brother bullied others. I've simply put everything back to where it should have been. He stood up, looking down at her. As for you, serve your sentence peacefully. If you behave well, you might get out sooner. But remember, after you get out, you and I, and Century Group, will have absolutely no connection. If I ever hear of you or anyone from the Lin family using my name, or trying to get close to the group again, you know the consequences. After saying that, he turned to leave. Shin Si, Lin Qian suddenly lunged at the glass, pounding her fists loudly. The child that our child, don't you miss it at all? The one I miscarried that it wasn't yours. But later I got pregnant with one of yours that I secretly had an abortion, that I was wrong, that I was really wrong. You hate me. But the child is innocent. Shin Si stopped in his tracks. He didn't turn around, but his back visibly stiffened. A few seconds later, he spoke calmly. That child, if it ever existed, was part of your scheme. Lin Qian, stop acting. Between us, there's no child and no future. He walked away without pausing this time. Behind them came Lin Qian's heart-wrenching cries, a sound that seemed to come from the depths of hell, filled with despair and regret. Shen Xiai walked out of the detention center. The sunlight outside was a bit dazzling. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath, and when he opened them again, the turmoil in his eyes had subsided. That woman named Lin Qian, along with that unbearable marriage, is now in the past. His journey continues ahead. Upon returning to the group, Shen Xiai did not revel in the satisfaction of settling scores with the Lin family. He knew full well that Lin Qian's downfall was just the beginning. Beneath this murky water lay deeper and more dangerous undercurrents. As expected, the shockwaves caused by Lin Qian's arrest were far more intense than anticipated. A few days later, a middle-aged man claiming to be Lin Qian's cousin arrived at the door in a menacing manner, accompanied by several well-dressed lawyers. This man was named Lin Chong, Lin Qian's father's nephew, who had been in charge of external relations in the family business and was considered a figure of some influence. Shen Xiai, my cousin made a mistake, but it doesn't deserve to die. You sent her to prison and ruined the Lin family's business. Isn't that too much? Lin Chong plopped down in the chair opposite Shen Xiai, crossed his legs, and his fleshy face trembled as he spoke rudely. Shen Xiai sat in his office chair, not even lifting his eyelids, continuing to flip through the quarterly report in his hands. Fairness? When Lin Qian embezzled public funds, committed adultery, and transferred assets, why didn't she think about fairness? When the Lin family illegally provided guarantees, withdrew funds, and engaged in bribery and corruption, why didn't they think about fairness? Now they think about fairness? Too late. Lin Chong was momentarily speechless, his face darkening before he sneered. Shen Xiai, don't think you can do whatever you want just because you're CEO. My Lin family has been operating locally for decades that we're not without connections. If you know what's good for you, get my cousin out of here right now, and we'll forget about the compensation. Otherwise what? Shen Xiai finally raised his eyes, his gaze like two cold scalpels, precisely cutting through Lin Chong's psychological defenses. Otherwise, you'll try to find connections? Try it. Let's see if your Lin family's connections are stronger, or if the bottom line of the law is stronger. He pressed the internal phone, his voice calm and even, let the legal department in. A few minutes later, the general counsel walked in with a thick stack of documents. Without even glancing at Lin Chong, he placed the documents directly in front of him. Mr. Lin, this is preliminary evidence of your company's suspected contract fraud and issuing false VAT invoices, involving a total amount of 30 million. We have completed the compilation and can submit it to the relevant departments at any time. Furthermore, we are also very clear about your personal records of frequenting Macau casinos over the past year, with cumulative wins and losses exceeding 5 million. Would you like me to explain the relevant legal provisions to you in detail? Lin Chong's face turned deathly pale instantly, and a fine layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead. He hadn't expected Shen Xiai to act so quickly, even uncovering his personal misdeeds so thoroughly. He thought he had done everything flawlessly. You're framing me, Lin Chong said fiercely, but his words betrayed his inner weakness. He picked up the documents and slunk away with his lawyer, his arrogant demeanor completely gone. Shen Xiai nodded to the legal director. Keep an eye on them. If the Lin family makes any moves, retaliate immediately. Remember, act according to the law, and don't give them any ammunition. Yes, Mr. Shun, the legal director acknowledged and withdrew. The storm has temporarily subsided, but Shen Xiai knows this is not the end. Lin Qian's network of relationships in the industry is intricate and complex, like a giant spider web, where pulling one thread can have far-reaching consequences. Lin Chong is just a small fry. There must be bigger fish behind him. That night, Shen Xiai did not go home, but drove to a room on the top floor of the group that was locked all year round. That was his mother's office. Since her passing, it had remained exactly as it was, even the dust seemingly frozen in time. Shen Xiai stood by the window, looking down at the city that never sleeps. Remembering his mother's dying words, Xiao Xiai, the company is your root. Protect it, but don't let it trap you. The human heart is the most unpredictable, especially the one beside you in bed. He didn't understand then, but he does now. Lin Qian's betrayal made him see the greed and fragility of human nature. It also made him realize that only by possessing absolute power can he protect himself and safeguard what he should protect. He walked to the desk, took out an old-fashioned key from a hidden compartment, and opened the bottom drawer. Inside was a yellow diary and a small USB drive. Shinsi plugged in the USB drive and turned on the computer. Inside, there was no financial data, but an encrypted list of contacts. The names on the list were all household names, spanning political and business circles, and even including some reclusive foreign tycoons. This was the last trump card his mother had left him, and the core network of SC Holding. He took out his phone and dialed an encrypted number. The phone rang for a long time before being answered. A deep, slightly hoarse male voice came from the other end. With a hint of laziness, Xiao Ci? Calling at this hour. Looks like you're in trouble. Uncle Zhou. It's me. Shin Ci said respectfully. There are some clowns in the country who are causing trouble and disturbing the peace. I would like to ask you to help me find out who else is backing Lin Qian. I need a complete list, including their overseas asset distribution. Uncle Zhou on the other end of the phone was silent for a moment, then chuckled. I knew it. That girl Lin Qian can't control you. Okay, the list will be sent to your email in 3 days. But, Xiao Ci, some things are better left unsaid. Too much fuss won't do you any good by pushing everyone too far. I understand. Uncle Zhou, Shin Ci said. I just want a clean house and don't want to get myself into trouble. But if anyone tries to drag me down with them, I won't be polite. Yes, it's ready. Uncle Zhou hung up the phone with satisfaction. By the way, our partners in Europe are very interested in your proposal, especially the part about new energy technologies. They hope you can come over in person to discuss the details. Arrange it for next week. Shin Ci hung up the phone. His eyes deep in thought. Outside the window, night deepened, and the city lights fell like stars. A greater storm was brewing. Shin Ci was already prepared. He not only intended to clean house, but also to follow the clues and uproot those interest groups hiding in the shadows, attempting to devour the group. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, in a private room at a private club, the atmosphere was unusually heavy. Lin Chong was drinking with a bald, middle-aged man. The man was called Boss Zheng, a well-known local real estate developer and one of Lin Qian's biggest financial backers. Xiangzi, what's going on? Why is that kid Shin Ci being so disrespectful? Boss Zheng took a sip of red wine and asked, squinting his eyes. Brother Zheng, that kid's completely unreasonable. Lin Chong said with a long face. He's practically stripped me naked and even threatened me with contract fraud. I think he's determined to make trouble for us. He's even sent people to investigate your side. Boss Zheng's face darkened. Shin Ci, I underestimated him. I thought he was just a bookish gigolo, but I didn't expect him to be so ruthless. Lin Qian, that idiot, is truly more trouble than she's worth. Brother Zheng, what do we do now? My cousin is still inside, and my second uncle is about to collapse too. Lin Chong asked anxiously. What's the panic? Boss Zheng put down his wine glass and snorted coldly. How much trouble can a newly promoted greenhorn cause? Who does he think he is? This place isn't a place where you can gain a foothold just by being ruthless. Go. Contact old Qian and bank manager Sunday. If the open approach doesn't work, we'll take the covert one. I don't believe Shin Ci can defend against all the open and covert attacks. You mean, first, suppress his stock price, then cut off his supply chain. A ruthless glint flashed in Boss Zheng's eyes. I want to see if he still has the mind to care about that bitch Lin Qian when Century Group is in complete chaos. At that time, he will naturally come begging to me. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. A hint of joy flashed in Lin Chong's eyes. I'll get on it right away. Inside the private room, the two exchanged a knowing smile, a smile tinged with malice. However, what they didn't know was that every word they spoke had already reached Shin Ci's ears through some special channel. Shin Ci stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, listening to the conversation coming through his earphones, a cold smile curving his lips. Trying to play dirty? He muttered to himself, his eyes sharp as an eagle's. Then I'll play along to the end. I just wonder what your expressions will be when you realize you're just pawns on the chessboard. He took out a brand new phone number, edited a text message, and sent it. Plan B activated. The hunt is on. Putting down his phone, Shin Ci's face revealed a long-lost, truly predatory smile. The game had only just entered its most exciting phase, and those self-righteous hunters would soon find themselves the prey. trapped in an invisible net with nowhere to escape. The sky in Zurich is a cold blue, much like the color in Shenxi's eyes at this moment. He sat in a private club on Bahnhofstrasse, opposite Matthew, the technical director of the European tech giant Cortez. On the table lay a cooperation agreement that had been revised countless times. The core point of contention being the licensing fee for an underlying algorithm called quantum core. This technology is the key to Century Group's current turnaround. And it was also the tough nut that Lin Xian spent 2 years trying to crack, but could never crack. Mr. Shun, I must reiterate that Matthew is a typical French gentleman who likes to use exaggerated gestures when he speaks. But at this moment his gestures reveal impatience. The source code of the core algorithm is our group's top secret. Licensing is possible, but the price must be the original price. This is the bottom line, and it's a strict order from the board of directors. Shenxi didn't touch the coffee in front of him, but instead gently tapped the thick document with his fingertips. His movements as slow and deliberate as stroking piano keys. Original price? Mr. Matthew, as far as I know, your company's technology has only 4 years and 7 months left of patent protection in the EU market. Meanwhile, our R&D center in Singapore completed the 3rd iteration of photonic simulation technology last month. He raised his eyes, meeting Matthew's gaze directly. His eyes held no trace of a businessman's obsequiousness, only a cold, almost cruel composure. This means that in 3 years at most, we will be able to circumvent your company's patent restrictions. At that point, your exorbitant licensing fees will become meaningless. Do you think a product destined to depreciate is worth my original price? Matthew's smile froze. Even many of their senior executives didn't know this information. How did Shenxi find out? Moreover, they had heard of that photon simulation technology, always assuming it was just a concept boasted by Easterners, never expecting it to have already entered the iteration stage. Mr. Shun, your information network is excellent. Matthew toned down his arrogance, leaning forward slightly, but said that technology needs time and market validation to move from the laboratory to commercialization. The terms we offered Century Group were already the best price in the Asia-Pacific region. Optimal price? Shenxi chuckled lightly. A cold laugh. He pulled a report from his folder and shoved it in front of Matthew. This is a summary of your company's losses last year in the North American market due to a large-scale product recall caused by a heat dissipation defect in the quantum crystal core. 370 million euros. If we appropriately leak this data to a few short-selling institutions eyeing your company and combine it with our media manipulation in the Asian market, how long do you think your so-called optimal price can be maintained? Matthew picked up the report, his expression growing increasingly grim as he read. This internal data was classified as top secret. Even some members of the board were unaware of it. Shenxi not only had access to it, but had also analyzed it so thoroughly. Mr. Shun, are you threatening me? Matthew's voice turned cold. No, I'm doing the math for you. Shenxi leaned back in his chair, relaxed yet exuding a powerful aura. Accept my offer, a 60% reduction in licensing fees, and 30% of your source code will be available for us to optimize and adapt. In exchange, I'll ensure that your company's PR crisis in North America never makes tomorrow's financial headlines. This deal not only saves the Cortez Group money, but also earns me a favor. Why not? The air froze for a full minute. Matthew picked up the wine glass on the table, but found his hand trembling. He didn't drink a drop and put it back. He stared at Shenxi, trying to discern smugness or weakness in the overly young Eastern man's face. But he failed. Shenxi's eyes were unfathomable, as if he had already seen through the ending. Mr. Shun, Matthew finally spoke, his tone much gentler. You are more difficult to deal with than I imagined. I need to report to headquarters. You may report. Shenxi stood up, straightened his suit cuffs with elegant composure, but said, I'll only give you 24 hours. If I don't receive a positive response in 24 hours, I will depart for Silicon Valley to visit your company's biggest competitor. I think they will be more interested in this technology and my photonic simulation technology. After saying that, Shenxi did not linger any longer and turned to leave the private room. Outside the door was a long corridor, and through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the shimmering waters of Lake Zurich stretched out. The assistant followed behind, whispering, Mr. Shun, Are we really going to go to Pleasant Technologies? That's Cortez's sworn enemy. Bluster, Shinsi said calmly. Matthew knew I was pressuring him, but he was more afraid that I would actually go to Pleasant. Cortez is now facing internal and external troubles that they need the Asia-Pacific market as a lifeline. And I am the only one who can give them that lifeline. What if they still refuse after 24 hours? No. Shinsi stopped and looked at the lake. Matthew's pupils had contracted for 0.3 seconds when he was looking at the third page of the report. That was an instinctive reaction when you see a fatal weakness. He didn't dare to gamble. Sure enough, less than 3 hours later, Matthew called, his tone much more respectful. Mr. Shun, sorry to bother you. Regarding the open source issue, the CEO said he could grant special approval to release 15%, but the licensing fee could only be reduced by 40%. That's our bottom line. 30%, reduced by 60%. Shinsi's voice left no room for argument. Furthermore, please convey to your company's president that I am available anytime if he wishes to discuss this. After all, we still have some old grievances from over 20 years ago that we can talk about. Old grudges? Matthew was taken aback. Tell him my name is Shinsi. My mother's name is Su Wan. After saying this, Shinsi hung up the phone immediately. A few seconds later, the phone rang again. This time, an elderly but energetic voice answered, with a heavy German accent. Shinsi? Su Wan's son. Hello, Mr. Hans. Shinsi's tone was more respectful than I've heard so much about you. My God, Hans, the president of the Cortez Group, exclaimed on the other end of the phone. Su Wan's child that you just said. Old debts? 23 years ago, when you visited China, my mother lent you some money to help you through that merger and acquisition crisis. The condition was that if your descendants ever encountered difficulties, she hoped you would lend a hand. Shinsi calmly recounted history. Now I'm facing a bit of trouble. Not a matter of survival, but a matter of development. I think this should be in accordance with the agreement made back then. There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, followed by a long sigh from Hans. So you're Su Wan's child. No wonder. No wonder you have such audacity. Su Wan was a great woman that she never intended for me to repay that money. Child, you're more of a businessman than she was back then, and even more ruthless. Okay, 30% of the source code, a 60% discount. Not only that, I'll send your best engineering team back to China with you to help with implementation. But, child, are you sure you want to do this? The resistance you face in China is probably far more formidable than the competition I face here. It's precisely because it's terrifying that we need an even sharper knife. Shinsi said, thank you for your help. Mr. Hans, I will take my team to Berlin next week to express my gratitude in person. Hanging up the phone, Shinsi looked out at the lake, the coldness in his eyes gradually turning into warmth. What his mother left behind was not just wealth, but also human kindness. These unseen assets are often more powerful than visible money. Just then, his phone vibrated. It was an encrypted email from China. Shinsi opened it to find a complete list and asset distribution map. Uncle Zhou's efficiency was extremely high that the vast network of interests behind Lin Qian was now clearly displayed before his eyes. Boss Zheng, Old Qian, bank manager's son, and several other unexpected names, even involving some officials nearing retirement. These people, feeling the pinch because of Lin Qian's arrest, are secretly plotting a counterattack. Trying to mess with me? Shinsi sneered, his finger lightly tracing the list. Let's see if your online movies are faster. Or the knife in my hand. He dialed another number. This time to Zhao Tianyu. Chairman Zhao, the garden back home needs pruning. I've already sown the seeds and prepared the fertilizer. It should be ready for harvest when I return from Europe. Okay. Zhao Tianyu's voice was steady and strong. I will protect this land for you back home. But, Xiaoxi, has the deal been settled with Cortez? It's settled. We not only got the technology, but we also secured a major investment. Shinsi said. Also, I've received the list. There are a few big fish on it. We can't make too much noise, but we can't let them get away either. Uncle Zhao, could you spread the word that Shinsi, have had a breakdown in negotiations in Europe? My cash flow is about to dry up, and I urgently need financial support from China. Let's see which kind-hearted people are willing to step forward and help me. You want to go fishing? Zhao Tianyu understood the unspoken meaning. That's right. Shinxi's lips curled into a cold smile. Since they want to play, I'll play a big game with them. Let's see if their hook is faster. Or my net traps. Hanging up the phone, Shinxi took a deep breath of the cool, lake-tinged air. The negotiations in Europe were just the first step. The real battlefield remained at home. Those enemies lurking in the shadows were waiting to see him fail. Unfortunately for them, what awaited them was a devastating blow. Shinxi turned to his assistant. Book your flight back to China the day after tomorrow. Also, notify the legal department and the investment department that we need to start dredging. Yes, Mr. Shun. The assistant gazed at Shinxi's tall, imposing figure, filled with awe. This man had effortlessly defused the difficulties posed by an international tycoon, and had also laid a trap thousands of miles away. Lin Qian's defeat was destined from the moment she chose to betray him, because Shinxi was never the useless person she saw, but a lurking eagle, poised to strike with deadly precision. The news of Shinxi's return to China did not cause much of a stir. The outside world only knew that the young CEO of Century Group had gone on a business trip to Europe, but no one knew how the talks went. However, within certain circles, a rumor spread like wildfire. Shinxi had run into trouble in Europe. The Cortez Group had rejected all technology licensing offers, and the Century Group had exhausted its cash flow and even mortgaged some of its core assets in order to raise that exorbitant licensing fee. Now, Shinxi desperately needed a huge sum of money to recoup his losses. Otherwise, the Century Group's cash flow would break down within 2 weeks. This news was like a drop of cold water falling into a pot of boiling oil, causing an immediate uproar. Inside Boss Zheng's private villa, the lights were on. Besides Lin Chong, several middle-aged men with ruddy complexions were sitting around a mahogany round table. One of them was bank manager Sunday, and another was old Qian, who had made his fortune in the building materials business. Everyone, have you verified the information? Boss Zheng swirled his wine glass, a smug smile on his face. That kid Shinxi got turned away in Europe and is now eager to come back for money. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. President Sun pushed up his gold-rimmed glasses and chuckled sinisterly. I've already spread the word that the bank is tightening its lending to the Century Group, suspending all loan applications for them. Without the bank's financial support, I wonder how long Shinxi can hold out. I'm fine on my end too, old Qian said, rubbing his hands together, his eyes gleaming with greed. I've already spoken to the suppliers for Century Group's core projects. If the raw materials are delayed by half a month, the production line will have to stop. When the stock price drops, he'll be begging us on his knees. Lin Chong excitedly chimed in, Brother Zheng, Uncle Sunday, Uncle Qian. Once that kid Shinxi goes bankrupt, won't my cousin be able to get out? Then we can take the company back. Take it back? Boss Zheng scoffed, glancing at Lin Chong. You think we're here to rescue him? We're here to collect his body. Once the stock price hits rock bottom, we'll buy in and take control of Century Group. As for Lin Qianhumph, if she knows what's good for her, she'll stay in there quietly and might even save her life. If she doesn't, we'll take care of her too. The group exchanged knowing smiles, smiles brimming with the satisfaction of a successful conspiracy. In their eyes, Shinxi was nothing more than a lucky young man. Without money, he was useless. They, on the other hand, controlled the funds and distribution channels, and were the true rule makers of this city. However, what they didn't know was that every word they said had been transmitted to Shinxi's ears through hidden listening devices. At this moment, Shinxi was sitting in the conference room on the top floor of Century Group, where the large screen in front of him was displaying real-time stock market data. The stock price was indeed falling, and on high volume. Clearly, unidentified funds were aggressively shorting the stock. Zhao Tianyu sat beside him, his face grave. Xiao Ci. It seems they've really made their move. These short-selling accounts, though disguised, are all ultimately connected to Lao Qian's investment companies, and the suppliers have indeed started delaying deliveries. Very good. Shinxi smiled, a smile devoid of any worry, but instead revealing a bloodthirsty excitement that the fish had taken the bait. Uncle Zhao, proceed according to plan. Let the hunters in. Are you sure? Zhao Tianyu asked, somewhat worried. This was a gamble with real money at stake. If they misjudged the situation or the funding couldn't keep up, the group would be in real danger. There will be no mistakes. Shinxi confidently stood up and walked to the window. They thought I was short of money. desperately seeking a lifeline. Little did they know, this was the opportunity one had been waiting for. Inform the investment department to begin accumulating shares sold on the market in batches. Remember, be slow and steady. Don't let the trading volume alert them. What we need to do is quietly gather all the shares circulating in the market into our hands. What about the suppliers? If the production line stops, the impact will be huge. It can't be stopped. Shinsiai turned around, his eyes gleaming with wisdom. I've already activated the backup supplier plan. Those small factories that Lin Qian suppressed have been waiting for this day. As long as the price is right, they can fill all the supply gaps within a week. In addition, have the legal department compile a list of those defaulting suppliers. Once this wave is over, we'll sue them one by one, leaving no one unpunished. Good. That's impressive. A hint of approval flashed in Zhao Tianyu's eyes. Then I'll go arrange the rest. Wait. Shinsiai called out to him, pulling a slip of paper from his pocket. It listed several account numbers, offshore accounts with ample funds. If the market experiences sharp fluctuations, use these funds to stabilize it. Remember, be discreet, but don't reveal our strength. Zhao Tianyu took the note, glanced at the number on it, and his pupils contracted sharply. It was an astronomical figure he could hardly imagine. He finally understood where Shun Si's confidence came from. This wasn't a matter of lacking money. That it was clearly a swift and decisive move, ready to wipe them all out in one fell swoop. Don't worry, Xiao Xi. With these accounts, we can handle any number of bookmakers, let alone a few. Zhao Tianyu felt a surge of confidence. In the following days, a thrilling behind-the-scenes battle unfolded in the stock market. Short sellers aggressively drove down the stock price, attempting to create panic. However, whenever the price fell below a certain critical point, mysterious funds would quietly support it, steadily accumulating shares. This gradual, insidious buying tactic made things very difficult for the short sellers. The harder they drove the price down, the lower their cost of accumulating shares became, ultimately helping Shinsiai in the process. At first, Boss Zheng and his men were smug, thinking that Shinsiai had run out of money and could only be slaughtered by them. But as the stock price decline slowed down and even occasionally rebounded, they began to feel uneasy. What's going on? Why isn't the stock price falling anymore? Boss Zheng roared in his office. Add more. Keep dumping it. I don't believe Shinsiai can conjure money out of thin air. Brother Zheng, something bad has happened. The trader rushed in, sweating profusely. The amount of money we've used is too large that it's attracted the attention of the regulators. Moreover, it seems our shares have been bought up by someone else. That the funds taking over are very stable. Not like the behavior of retail investors at all. Investigate. Find out exactly who's taking over. Boss Zheng roared. However, the investigation revealed a string of shell companies and offshore accounts. The source could not be traced at all. Meanwhile, Century Group suddenly held an emergency press conference. Shinsiai attended in person, and facing the flashing lights, he remained calm and only said 3 sentences. Century Group's cooperation with the European Cortez Group is progressing smoothly, and the relevant technology transfer agreement has been formally signed. The group has ample cash flow, and all business operations are running normally. The group reserves the right to pursue legal action against those who maliciously short sell and spread rumors. The press conference was met with an uproar. Reporters bombarded him with questions. Mr. Shun, what is the technology transfer fee? Does the group have the capacity to pay it? Mr. Shun, are the rumors circulating outside that the group's cash flow has dried up true? Mr. Shun, what measures has the group taken to address the recent breaches of contract by suppliers? Shinsiai answered each question clearly and logically, with detailed data. When he mentioned the technology transfer fee, which was far lower than market expectations, and that the Cortez Group would send an engineering team to assist with the implementation, the entire room fell silent. This isn't a breakdown in negotiations. That it's clearly securing incredibly favorable terms. The stock market reversed instantly upon the news. Century Group's stock price soared, and those who had shorted the stock were immediately trapped at a high price. Boss Zheng and the others stared at the bright red bullish candlestick on the screen, their faces darker than the bottom of a pot. They finally realized they had fallen into a meticulously designed trap. Shinsiai, he knew all along. Boss Zheng slumped in his chair, his body ice cold. He deliberately spread false information to lure us into a trap. What do we do now? If the stock price goes up, our short positions will be liquidated. President Sun was sweating profusely with anxiety. What else can we do? Close the position. Close it now. Old Qian roared. Recover as much loss as we can. Any later, and we'll lose everything. However, when they hastily ordered to close their positions, they discovered there weren't enough counterparties in the market. The mysterious buying power had vanished the moment they tried to exit. The stock price was locked at its daily limit, and they couldn't buy it back to close their positions. This is no longer a simple stock market game, but a complete massacre. Just as Boss Zheng and his team were in a state of panic, an even bigger blow followed. First, regarding the bank, President Sun received a notice from his superiors that he was suspended from his duties pending investigation for suspected illegal lending and collusion with outsiders. Immediately afterwards, Lao Qian's building materials company was raided by relevant departments due to tax evasion and product quality issues, and its accounting books were confiscated. Meanwhile, Boss Zheng's real estate project was ordered to halt construction and undergo rectification due to illegal land occupation and false advertising. Overnight, these once powerful figures all fell from grace. And the mastermind behind it all was Shen Ci. He used technology obtained from the Cortez Group as bait to force short sellers to expose themselves. Then, leveraging his vast financial advantage, he turned the tables in the stock market. Finally, using the evidence he had gathered, he cooperated with regulatory authorities to bring these individuals to justice one by one. This series of combined punches was swift, ruthless, and virtually flawless. A few days later, Shen Ci convened another shareholders meeting. This time, he was no longer the CEO who needed to be careful, but a king who held absolute control and whose prestige had reached its peak. Ladies and gentlemen, Shen Ci stood on the stage, his gaze sweeping over the shareholders below, those who had once fawned over Lin Qian but now held him in high esteem. The past few months had been a turbulent period for Century Group. Some tried to bring us down, some tried to divide us, but they all failed. He paused, then raised his voice 8 octaves, because they don't understand Century Group, nor do they understand me. Shen Ci, from today onward, Century Group will enter a new era. We will leverage Cortez's technology to comprehensively upgrade our product line, doubling our market value within 3 years. Anyone who hinders our progress, whoever they may be, will pay a heavy price. The applause from the audience was thunderous and lasted for a long time. After the meeting, Shen Ci returned to his office. Zhao Tianyu was waiting for him, a pleased smile on his face. Xiao Ci, excellent skills. Boss Zheng and his group are finished. You've uprooted the power behind Lin Qian. This is just the beginning. Shen Ci, however, didn't show much joy. Instead, he seemed somewhat exhausted. Uncle Zhao, the rest of this mess is yours and the professional management teams to handle. I'm tired. Tired? Zhao Tianyu was taken aback. What are you going to do? I need to rest for a while. Shen Ci walked to the window, looking at the endless stream of cars outside. The burden my mother left me. I've carried it for so long. It's time to put it down. The group is on the right track now. With you here, I feel at ease. I want to go to some places, to see the paths my mother once walked, and also to see the path I will take in the future. Zhao Tianyu remained silent for a long time before finally nodding. All right, you really should take a break. But, Xiao Ci, wherever you go, Century Group will always keep its doors open for you. Thank you, Uncle Zhao. Shen Ci turned around and bowed deeply. He knew that the era of Shen Ci, the Avenger, had ended, and his new era as an ordinary person was just beginning. All those grudges and feuds, with the downfall of Boss Zheng and others, and with Lin Qian's repentance in prison, could finally come to a close. He took out his phone and looked at the photo on the screen, taken at the beach, a place he had always wanted to go. A genuine, relaxed smile finally appeared on his lips. On a night by Lake Zurich, the air was filled with the cool scent of mist and cedar. Shen Ci met with Hans Kortz, the president of the Kortz Group. Once again, this time, it wasn't in a formal conference room, but at Hans's private lakeside estate. Old Cortez was 78 years old, his full head of silver hair neatly combed. He wore a loose cashmere cardigan and sat in a wheelchair by the fireplace, holding a steaming cup of black tea. If it weren't for his still sharp blue-gray eyes, He would look more like a kind old grandfather. Sit down, child. Hans gestured to the armchair opposite him. His voice, though aged, was still strong. You're faster than I expected. I thought it would take you at least a month to deal with those fleas back home. Shinsiai didn't stand on ceremony, gracefully taking his seat and crossing his legs. Fleas may be small, but they can be incredibly disruptive. But since they're willing to jump, let them jump until they die. His tone was calm, as if what had just ended wasn't a thrilling capitalist hunt, but a simple afternoon stroll. Hans laughed. A deep, magnetic laugh. Suwon was just like that back then, always effortlessly driving her opponents into a corner. She was even more ruthless than you, because she never left her opponents with any illusions. And you, just now at the negotiating table in Europe, in the end, still left me a sliver of hope. Because you are my mother's benefactor. Shinsiai looked directly into Hans's eyes. It was also because we needed Cortez's technology, and even more so, a steadfast ally, not a mortal enemy. In business, I don't do things that result in mutual destruction. Good. Very good. Hans nodded in satisfaction, waving for the waiter to leave. Only the two of them remained in the large living room. Now, let's talk about your mother. 23 years ago, I visited China and suffered the biggest setback of my business career. It was a hostile takeover that I was almost bankrupt. It was your mother who, on that rainy night, came to me with a blank check. Hans closed his eyes, as if lost in memories. She said, Hans, I trust your judgment, just as I trust my assessment of silk. This money isn't a loan, that it's an investment. When you rise again, don't forget to plant a sycamore tree for me in the east. Shinsiai listened quietly. This was the first time he had heard so much about his mother's righteous act from back then. In his memory, his mother was always gentle yet strict, and had never mentioned this past event. Later, I returned to Europe. The sycamore tree I planted had grown and become the Cortez group we know today. Hans opened his eyes, his gaze fixed intently on Shinsiai. But I kept waiting for Suwon to make her demands of me. Even if she wanted half of my fortune, I would have done it without hesitation. But she never did. She would only occasionally send a card, telling me she was doing well and the group was thriving. Until 3 years ago, I received an email. A scheduled email she wrote before her illness. She said that if she were gone one day, her son Shinsiai might face difficulties, and she hoped I could offer assistance as appropriate, but not interfere too much in his upbringing. Shinsi's heart clenched. It turned out that his mother had long foreseen his departure, as well as Lin Xian's betrayal and the group's crisis. That email was the last safeguard his mother left him. This ring was a keepsake she left behind. Hans took off a necklace from his neck, on which hung an antique jade ring, a pair with the one in Shinsi's pocket. She said that if her son was successful, she would use this ring to encourage him. If he was a spoiled brat, she would use this ring to sever his hopes. Now it seems that you not only inherited her business acumen, but also her ruthless kindness. Hans removed the ring and, along with the necklace, pushed it towards Shinsiai. Now, it's returned to its rightful owner. Shinsiai, you did well. Not only did you refrain from using my power to retaliate, but you also used the rules and your wisdom to complete the hunt. This shows that you no longer need the ring's protection. But I have a request. Please speak. Shinsiai took the ring, the icy touch sending a chill down his spine. Cortez Group, I want to hand over some management control to you. Hans's words struck like a thunderbolt. He wasn't asking you to be CEO, but rather a strategic partner. You're in the East. I'm in the West. We can build a business empire spanning Eurasia. Suwon invested in me back then, and now I'm investing in her son. It's a cycle of fate. Shinsiai fell silent. It was a tremendous temptation, but also a heavy burden. Accepting meant he would once again be embroiled in endless business disputes that refusing might hurt an elder's feelings and betray his mother's long-held plans. Uncle Hans, I carefully chose my words, acknowledging your kind offer. However, the Century Group has just experienced turmoil and is in dire need of rebuilding. If I were to leave now, I would be letting down the foundation laid by my mother and the support of Uncle Zhao Tianyu. I will do my best in cooperating with Cortez, but I cannot accept the management rights. He raised his head, his gaze resolute. I want to be a free spirit, not a second Hans Cortez, or a second Suwon. I want to see the sights my mother didn't get to see, to experience the lives she never got to experience. Hans gazed at him for a long time, then let out a long sigh. So it really is Su Wan's son. She refused my earnest entreaties in the same way back then, saying she had to go back to tend her garden. Very well. Son, I respect your choice, but you must accept this ring. It is not a symbol of power, but a reminder of responsibility. Remember, with great power comes great responsibility. You may not rule an empire, but you cannot stand idly by and watch it crumble. I understand. Shinsiai solemnly put the ring on his finger that it fit perfectly. At that moment, he felt a profound sense of connection, as if bound by blood. Furthermore, Hans's lips curled into a sly smile. Regarding those minor troubles you're facing domestically, I've already had several European funds issue short-selling reports specifically targeting Mr. Zheng and his associates' hidden assets overseas. Although you've resolved most of the issues domestically, I think adding a bit more international pressure will make their prison life even more colorful. Shinsiai was taken aback for a moment, then chuckled. It turned out that this old fox had already made his move in secret all along, but had kept it from him until now, just to put his mind at ease. Thank you, Uncle Hans. Shinsiai expressed his sincere gratitude. No need to thank me. Thank your mother. Hans waved his hand. Go, child. Go and enjoy your freedom. But remember, the doors of the Century Group are always open for you. If you get tired of playing, come back anytime. This chair is still reserved for you. As Shinsiai left the manor, he glanced back. Hans was still sitting by the fireplace, his back slightly hunched in the firelight. Yet like a majestic mountain, he knew that he had not only gained a precious friendship, but also formally bid farewell to the past self who needed to hide behind the scenes and rely on the strength of others. Back in China, the news had already spread. Boss Zheng, bank manager Sunday Lao Qian, and others not only faced severe legal punishment domestically, but their assets transferred overseas through underground banks were also targeted by international capital, resulting in significant losses. This was undoubtedly adding insult to injury, completely extinguishing their hopes of a comeback. Zhao Tianyu greeted Shinsiai at the airport. The two smiled at each other in the car. Everything understood without words. Xiaoxiai. Lin Qian went on a hunger strike in prison yesterday and was forcibly sent to the hospital. Zhao Tianyu suddenly said. She kept calling your name, saying she wanted to see you one last time. Shinsiai gazed at the rapidly receding street scene outside the window, his eyes calm and unwavering. There's no need to meet again. Give her the best medical care. The cost will be covered by my personal account. Tell her the score is settled. Take care of yourself. All right. Zhao Tianyu nodded, saying nothing more. He knew that Shinsi's move was resolute and thorough. No lingering attachments. No looking back. That was the demeanor of a true strongman. As the car drove towards the city center, Shinsiai felt himself drifting further and further away from this bustling metropolis. His heart had already flown to the distant Azure Sea. 3 months later, in a coastal town in Donghai City, there are no skyscrapers or bustling traffic here. Only endless beaches and the constant sound of the waves. The town has only one main street, lined with all sorts of small shops, exuding a relaxed vacation vibe. On a street corner, there's an unassuming bookstore with a sign bearing for simple, ancient characters, Xiqian Bookstore. The shop is small, simply decorated, and the wooden bookshelves exude a faint sandalwood scent. It doesn't carry many bestsellers. Instead, it mainly offers ancient texts, poetry collections, and obscure philosophical works. The shop owner was a young man in a white cotton linen shirt, with a thin face and skin that had turned a healthy tan from the sea breeze. He was sitting by the window, engrossed in a yellowed copy of Walden. Sunlight streamed through the French windows, casting a soft golden glow on him. He is Shinsiai. He had been living in seclusion in this small town for 3 months. During these 3 months, he had cut off most of his contact with the outside world, only occasionally calling Zhao Tianyu to check on the Century Group's situation. Under the leadership of professional managers, the group was operating smoothly. Its stock price was steadily rising, and it had long since shaken off its previous gloom. And he, too, had completely freed himself from the shell of being known as President Shun. The sound of wind chimes broke the tranquility of the shop. Shinsiai didn't even look up, and said softly, "Welcome." The newcomer didn't speak, but simply stood quietly. A faint smell of disinfectant mingled with a barely perceptible scent of perfume filled the air. Shinsiai paused in his flipping through the book. then slowly raised his head. Standing in the doorway was a woman dressed in a plain cotton dress. She had lost a lot of weight. Her cheekbones were slightly prominent, and her once meticulously styled long hair was casually tied back. Her face was bare of makeup, giving her a sickly pallor. Only her eyes still retained a trace of their former arrogance. But more so, they held the weariness and humility that came with life's hardships. It is Lin Qian. She's out of prison. Shen Xiai knew this day would come when he received Zhao Tianyu's text message that morning. But he didn't expect her to find her here. The two stood several meters apart, staring at each other. Time seemed to freeze at that moment. Finally, Lin Qian spoke first. Her voice was hoarse and dry, as if she hadn't drunk water in a long time. Shen Xiai. Shen Xiai closed the book, placed it on his lap, his expression as calm as a still autumn lake. Sit down. Would you like some water? Lin Qian shook her head and walked unsteadily to the wicker chair opposite him, where she sat down. Her gaze greedily swept over Shen Xi's face, as if trying to etch his appearance after months of separation into her heart. I'm out of prison, she whispered, like a child who had done something wrong. I've heard. Shen Xi's tone was completely calm. How are you feeling? It's all right. Lin Qian lowered her head, her fingers unconsciously twisting the hem of her skirt. She had behaved well in prison, and her sentence had been reduced. Her mother had passed away. Her father was in a nursing home, and her younger brother had found a delivery job, which was relatively stable. As for me, I found a cleaning job at a guest house in town. It wasn't tiring. She reported her recent situation word by word, her tone humble to the point of being beneath her notice. This was a stark contrast to the once imperious CEO she had been. Shen Xiai listened quietly without interrupting. Only after she finished speaking did he ask calmly, "Have you received the medical fees?" Lin Qian's body trembled violently. She knew that the huge medical bill paid anonymously was from Shen Xiai. She had never dared to confirm it. But now that she heard him mention it himself, tears instantly welled up in her eyes. I received it. Thank you. She choked back tears, reaching out to wipe them away, only to find her hands covered in rough calluses, the marks of cleaning. She hurriedly hid her hands under the table. No need to thank me. Shen Xiai watched her actions, his eyes flickering slightly, but he quickly regained his composure. That's what your mother deserves. After all, the old woman is innocent. Lin Qian took a deep breath, trying to calm herself down, and raised her head to look directly into Shen Xi's eyes. Those eyes, which she once loathed and found pathetic, were now so deep that she wanted to drown in them. Shen Xiai, I came not to bother you. I just wanted to say sorry to you in person. Her tears finally rolled down, dripping onto the old desk, for everything she had done for me. Greed for money, cheating, transferring assets, forcing you to divorce me. I regret it all. I know it's too late to say anything, but I really regret it every day, every moment. As Shen Xiai looked at the tear tracks on her face, the last trace of resentment in his heart vanished. It wasn't pity, but a kind of relief akin to watching a flower of evil wither away. It's all in the past, he said, a hint of gentleness in his voice. Living well is the best way to honor the past. Lin Qian gave a bitter smile, a sorrowful one. Live well. Shen Xiai, do you really not hate me anymore? Not even a little bit? Shen Xiai remained silent for a moment. Did he hate her? He had hated her before. He hated her greed, her betrayal, and how she had squandered his mother's hard work. But now, looking at the woman before him, whose appearance had been ravaged by life, he realized that his hatred had long since faded with the passage of time and her destitution. He had hated her. He admitted it honestly. But now, he felt more like a stranger. Lin Qian, we were like two books, once placed together, now each put back on its own shelf, never to cross paths again. This was for the best. These words shattered the last glimmer of hope in Lin Qian's heart. She understood his unspoken meaning. He had let go, but he had also completely excluded her from his life. Between them lay an insurmountable chasm called the past. I understand. Lin Qian stood up, her movements slow and heavy. Thank you, Shen Xiai. Really, thank you for anonymously paying the medical bills back then, and for my brother's job. I know it was you who arranged it. You've done more than enough for me. She bowed deeply and did not straighten up for a long time. Shen Xiai didn't help her up, but just watched quietly, until she straightened up and turned to walk towards the door. The moment her hand touched the doorknob, Shin Siai suddenly spoke. Lin Qian. Lin Qian froze, then turned around abruptly, a faint glimmer of hope igniting in her eyes. From now on, Shin Siai said, gazing at the sea outside the window, her voice distant. Don't look for me anymore. Don't try to find out anything about me. Forget the past. Start anew. This is my final advice to you. The light in Lin Qian's eyes vanished instantly. She opened her mouth, as if to say something, but in the end, she only managed a bleak smile, nodded slightly, and pushed open the door to leave. The wind chimes rang again. The door opened, then closed again. The sun still shone brightly. The waves still crashed, and the bookstore returned to its tranquility, as if she had never been there at all. Shin Siai picked up Walden again, but couldn't turn the page for a long time. He touched the jade ring Hans had given him in his pocket, feeling its cool touch. Just then, the shop door was pushed open again. A girl with a ponytail and a bright smile like a sunflower peeked in. Her name was Ran, the owner of the guest house in town, and the only person who had been able to enter Shin Si's living radius in the past few months. Shin Siai, what are you daydreaming about? I bought some freshly caught sea fish. I'll make your favorite steamed grouper tonight. And Ran skipped in, carrying a string of still dripping sea fish, radiating energy and vitality. Shin Siai looked at her, and the cold pretense on his face instantly melted away, revealing a warm smile from the bottom of his heart. That smile was an expression he had practiced countless times in front of the mirror over the past few months, but could only show naturally in front of Ran. Here he comes. He closed the book, stood up, and naturally took the fish from her hand. His fingertips inadvertently touched the warm back of her hand. He was here to help. Hey, don't touch it. It's fishy. I'll wash it. Anran snatched the fish, giving him a reproachful glare, her eyes full of lively affection. Shin Siai watched her busy figure in the kitchen, the sunlight outlining her soft features. He turned his head and looked out the window again. On the sea, a flock of seagulls skimmed across the shimmering surface, flying towards the distance. He knew that Shin Siai, the one who embodied revenge, conspiracy, and scheming, was completely dead. The profound words that belong to life, tranquility, and ordinariness have only just been born. Lin Qian's departure marks the complete end of the past, and Rant's appearance, however, signifies the beginning of a new life. His life has finally turned a heavy page and ushered in a truly warm and bright chapter. Life by the sea is like the tides, gentle and regular. In the early morning, Shin Siai would jog 5 kilometers along the coastline to watch the sunrise paint the sea golden in the morning. He would organize books at Xiqin bookstore and occasionally tell ancient poems to the children in the town's primary school in the afternoon. He would sit by the window reading until Ran finished her work at the guest house. And then the two of them would go to the market to pick out fresh fish and shrimp, and then go home to cook. This life, simple to the point of being monotonous, gave Shin Siai an unprecedented sense of peace. He even began to get used to no longer thinking about Century Group's stock price, no longer calculating the depths of people's hearts. Until that afternoon of torrential rain, a strange express delivery package shattered the tranquility he had deliberately created. It was a brown paper box without any sender information. The package only had 4 handwritten words on it, to Shin Siai personally. The handwriting was delicate, yet it had a certain strength, much like the handwriting of his mother, Su Wan. Shin Siai frowned, picked up the package, and returned to his desk. And Ran had gone to the city to buy winter fabrics. He was alone in the shop. Thunder rumbled outside the window, and rain pelted the glass like broken beads. He carefully opened the package. Inside was a black metal box, unlocked, with only a fingerprint reader. Shin Siai tried pressing his thumb on it, and after 2 beeps, the box opened. Inside the box lay an old-fashioned silver USB drive and a yellowed envelope. The envelope read, "My dear son, Shin Si. Seeing this letter is like seeing you in person." Shin Si's heart skipped a beat. Was this the last letter his mother left him? Or a will that was 3 years overdue? He took a deep breath and tore open the envelope. The letter was yellowed and the edges were a little brittle, but the handwriting was still clear. Xiao Xi, by the time you read this letter, your mother will probably no longer be alive. Don't be sad. Birth, aging, sickness, and death are the natural order of things. Your mother has simply gone to a world without deceit and treachery. This USB drive is your mother's last gift to you, and also a safety net. Its contents concern the life and death of the Century Group, and the very foundation of our Shin family. I hope you never need to use it, because that would mean the group is beyond repair. But if that girl Lin Qian really does go astray as I predict, or if external forces have infiltrated beyond redemption, then you can use it to cleanse everything. Remember, power is a double-edged sword. Your mother founded the group to serve the country through industry and to provide a better life for our family. Don't let desire consume you, nor let hatred blind you. If one day you feel tired and weary, turn off this USB drive and live the life you want. Your mother's greatest wish is not for you to become the emperor of a business empire, but for you to be safe and happy. Finally, the answer to your origins is on the USB drive. The man named Shin Jiangwo is not your biological father. The real secret is hidden in a third layer of encrypted folder. Love you, Mom. The letter was short, but every word carried immense weight. Shin Si's hand holding the letter trembled slightly. His mother had indeed foreseen everything. She knew Lin Qian's greed, knew the group's crisis, and even knew his doubts about his father's identity. This USB drive was the nuclear button she had prepared for him. He plugged in the USB drive, and the computer screen lit up, just as the letter had stated. The USB drive contained tightly encrypted partitions. The first layer was a simple password. He entered his mother's birthday and gained access successfully. Inside were original equity structure diagrams of the group, as well as keys to some overseas accounts. He tried the second layer of encryption several times, entering his birthday, and it worked. The information stored inside made him gasp. It contained detailed evidence of Lin Qian's father, Lin Jinghua, along with boss Zheng, bank manager Sunday, and a group of others, who had profited over the years through bribery, tax evasion, and embezzlement of state-owned assets. Each item was accompanied by transfer records, copies of contracts, and even several audio recordings. His mother had actually started planning and collecting this evidence more than a decade ago, just as a precaution. So, mother had laid this trap all along. Shin Si muttered to himself. No wonder the Lin family, though arrogant, never dared to cross the line when mother was alive. It turned out their every move was under mother's surveillance. He composed himself and opened the third layer of encrypted folder. The password required here was an acronym of the initials of a name, SWSC, Su Wan, and Shin Si. The moment the folder is opened, a video file starts playing automatically. The mother in the video looked younger than I remembered, and the background appeared to be her office. She looked at the camera with a gentle, yet complex expression. Xiao Si, if you've read this far, it means you've touched upon the most crucial secret. Your mother has kept your background a secret from you because she didn't want you to carry too much of a burden. Your biological father is not Shin Jiangwo. Shin Jiangwo is your maternal grandfather's adopted son. He impersonated your father to protect me. Your biological father's name is Zhou Mingxian. Shin Si's pupils constricted sharply. Zhou Mingxian, that financial prodigy who, according to business legend, had died 20 years ago? That Chinese investment genius once hailed as the Wolf of Wall Street, who later mysteriously disappeared. The mother in the video continued. Mingxian offended a conservative force in China back then. To protect me, he faked his death and fled overseas. He's now a senior advisor at a Swiss bank and one of the true behind-the-scenes controllers of SC Holding. The jade ring you're wearing is a keepsake he left behind. Hans Cortez is also an old friend of his. Shin Si felt a buzzing in his head as countless clues connected at that moment. No wonder Hans took such good care of him. No wonder SC Holdings' foundation was unfathomable. No wonder his mother's education of him was always extraordinary. It turned out that such wild and unrestrained blood flowed in his veins. Xiao Si, Mingxian wants you to live an ordinary life. So he has never met you. But as your father, he has always been watching over you secretly. If you wish, you can contact him through the mark on the ring. But Mom wants you to remember that no matter whose son you are first and foremost Shin Si, Su Wan's son. Don't be bound by blood ties. And don't be blinded by wealth. Do what you believe is right. The video ended, and the screen went black. Shin Si leaned back in his chair, closed his eyes, and felt the overwhelming shock within him. It turned out that the seemingly useless Shin Jiangwo he had always believed was merely a facade. It turned out that his real father was a legend. And he, Shin Si, possessed such astonishing bloodline and background. This sudden truth left him somewhat bewildered. His proud ambition for independent revenge seemed almost laughable after learning all this. It turned out that he had always been supported by two great mountains: his mother's meticulous planning and his biological father's invisible protection. So that's how it is. No wonder. Shinsiai gave a wry smile, picked up the jade ring on the table, and examined it carefully under the light. Sure enough, there was a line of extremely tiny engravings on the inside of the ring. MXSW, Zhou Mingxian, and Su Wan. He suddenly felt that his struggles of the past 20 years had been like a prearranged drama. He thought he was a lone hero, but in reality, he had always been the one being protected. This feeling left him somewhat disappointed. But more than that, he felt an indescribable warmth. He realized that, unbeknownst to him, so many people loved and protected him. Just then, the shop door was pushed open, and Ran, carrying a pile of fabric and soaking wet, burst in. She was startled to see Shinsiai sitting at the table, his face pale. "Shinsiai, what's wrong? You look so pale. Have you caught a cold?" She put down the fabric and rushed over, pressing the back of her hand to his forehead. Shinsiai took her hand in his own, and the warm touch instantly pulled him out of his chaotic thoughts, looking into Ran's clear and worried eyes. The emptiness he felt due to the huge secret about his background miraculously dissipated, regardless of whose son he was, regardless of how much wealth and background he possessed. At this moment, in this seaside town, beside Ran, he was simply Shinsiai, a Shinsiai who wanted to live an ordinary life with her. "It's nothing." Shinsiai shook his head, pulled Ran into his arms, and smelled the faint scent of soap in her hair. He was just a little sentimental when he saw some old things. Anran nestled obediently in his arms, asking no questions. She knew this man harbored many stories, and she didn't need to pry. Simply being there for him was enough. "It's raining so hard outside. The waves are even crashing onto the shore." Anran said softly, "Let's have congee tonight. I bought your favorite preserved eggs." "Okay." Shinsiai hugged her tightly, as if he were embracing the whole world. Outside the window, thunder and rain raged. Inside, all was peaceful. Shinsiai stared at the still black screen on his computer and made a decision. He reached out and pressed and held the delete key on the keyboard. With a soft click, all the data on the USB drive, except for his mother's letter and the third layer encrypted folder, was permanently deleted. He no longer needed the evidence against the Lin family and Boss Zhang, the weapons that could have been used to unleash a bloodbath. Lin Qian had already been punished, and the Lin family had been destroyed. Further revenge was meaningless. He chose the gentlest way to end this covert war that had lasted for over 20 years. As for the secret about his biological father, he decided to keep it sealed away forever. He didn't need to search for that mythical father, because he already had his own life and a lover. "Anran," Shinsiai suddenly spoke up. "Let's go to Northern Europe to see the Northern Lights after this winter is over." Anran snuggled against him, smiling like a flower. "Okay. I heard that wishes made under the aurora are very effective. Let's make a wish." Shinsiai lowered his head and kissed the top of her head, wishing for peaceful times and a stable world. The computer screen went completely dark. The long-buried trump card was never revealed. Shinsiai, in his own way, best fulfilled his mother's dying wish, to lay down the butcher's knife and become a Buddha. And his new life was only just beginning. The winter nights in Scandinavia are cold and pure. Shinsiai and Ran, bundled up in thick down jackets, stood inside the glass-domed hotel in Saraselka, Finland. Outside, the temperature was a frigid -30 degrees Celsius, but inside it was warm and cozy. Above them, the dazzling aurora borealis was like a dream, with green ribbons of light dancing wildly across the sky, sometimes like silk, sometimes like a waterfall, adorning the entire night sky with a picturesque beauty. Anran pressed her face against the glass window, her cheeks flushed with excitement, frantically snapping photos. "Shinsiai, look, those are green sprites. So beautiful. I've never seen such a beautiful sight before." Shinsiai stood behind her, holding a cup of hot cocoa, his gaze gently falling on Ran's excited profile. More than the magnificence of the aurora borealis, he preferred to appreciate her pure joy at this moment. "Make a wish," he whispered in her ear, and Ran immediately closed her eyes, clasped her hands together, and whispered devoutly, I hope Shinsiai will always be healthy and happy. I hope we can continue like this forever. I hope. She secretly opened one eye, turned to look at Shinsiai, and blushed. I hope we can have a lovely baby next spring. Shinsiai felt as if something had gently bumped into his heart, a warm current flowing through his body. He put down his cup, gently wrapped his arms around Rant's waist from behind, and rested his chin on her shoulder. Okay, let's make a wish together. He closed his eyes and silently prayed, may this life be without regrets, and may the person before me live in peace. The aurora borealis swirled overhead, as if witnessing this silent vow. After returning to China, Shinsiai did not immediately go back to the seaside town. He first went to the capital and met someone. It was a traditional courtyard house nestled at the foot of the western hills. Simple and quiet. Inside, an elderly man in a gray Zhongshan suit was practicing Tai Chi, hearing footsteps. He slowly finished his movements and turned around. The old man looked to be in his 60s, with gray hair, but he was in good spirits, and his eyes were bright and piercing, exuding the authority of someone who had long held a high position. He was the Uncle Zhou that Zhao Tianyu had mentioned, and the person that Shinsiai had finally managed to contact after several twists and turns. Based on the clues on the USB drive, you look a lot like your mother. Uncle Zhou looked at Shinsiai, his gaze filled with scrutiny and a hint of barely perceptible admiration. You also look a lot like your father. Shinsiai did not bow, but simply stood calmly in place. Uncle Zhou, hello. Thank you for your care and support over the years. Taking care of me? Uncle Zhou chuckled, pointed to the stone bench beside him, and sat down. It's not about taking care of you. It's just fulfilling a request I made. Your mother saved my life back then, and your father is a close friend of mine despite our age difference. Seeing you get to where you are today, without bringing shame to me or your parents, makes me very happy. The two sat facing each other, under the old locust tree in the courtyard, where the aroma of tea wafted. You saw that USB drive. Uncle Zhou's question wasn't a question. I've read it. Shinsiai readily admitted it. But I deleted most of the content. I want those grudges to end here. Oh, Uncle Zhou raised an eyebrow. Your father was known for his vengeful nature back then, but I didn't expect you to be so soft-hearted. Well, that's good too. He nodded. When will this cycle of revenge end? You have a more magnanimous heart than your father. Those documents would only cause trouble if kept. You did the right thing. About my father, Shinsiai hesitated for a moment, but still asked. Zhou Mingxian is doing well now, living a secluded life in Switzerland, enjoying his grandchildren and living a carefree life. Uncle Zhou said that he asks me about you every year, but he said that unless you take the initiative to contact him, he will never disturb your life. He is a good observer, but not a good father. He feels guilty about that. Shinsiai was silent for a moment, then shook his head. There's no need to tell him I was here. Just like you said, let him be at ease. I don't need him to make amends. I have my life, and he has his world. Not interfering with each other is the best state. Uncle Zhou gave Shinsiai a deep look, a hint of admiration flashing in his eyes. What a fine example of non-interference. Shinsiai, you are more insightful than you think. If your mother knew this in the afterlife, she would be proud of you. The two then discussed Century Group's future plans and the trends of the domestic and international economies. Although Uncle Zhou lived in seclusion, he had a keen insight into the world's affairs, and his few words of guidance gave Shinsiai a sense of sudden enlightenment. Before leaving, Uncle Zhou handed Shinsiai a jade pendant. This was left to you by your father. He said that if you ever had a child, he would give it to that child. Now I'm giving it to you, returning it to its rightful owner. As for you, tell him he has a good son, and that's enough. Shinsiai accepted the jade pendant. The jade was warm and smooth, and carved with a lifelike eagle spreading its wings. He carefully put it away and bowed deeply to Uncle Zhou. Thank you. Uncle Zhou, please also tell my father, take care. As he stepped out of the courtyard, Shinsiai glanced back. Uncle Zhou was still sitting under the locust tree, his figure desolate yet upright. He knew that this parting might be their last, but he had no regrets. Some family ties are more important to keep in the heart than to be seen. Back in the seaside town, life returned to its usual tranquility. Xiqian Bookstore's business was lukewarm, just enough to make ends meet. Shinsiai and Ran rented a small house with a yard on the edge of town. which was filled with Ran's favorite roses and climbing roses. Shinsiai even tried grafting fruit trees. And although the success rate was not high, he enjoyed it. In the spring, Anran became pregnant. When the pregnancy test showed 2 lines, and Ran cried with excitement. Shinsiai picked her up and spun her around the room several times. The usually calm man was as flustered as a child, frantically looking up pregnancy recipes and decorating the nursery. Zhao Tianyu flew in from China, bringing a large amount of health supplements and congratulatory gifts. Looking at the happy smile on Shinsi's face, Zhao Tianyu was filled with emotion. Xiao Xiai, this is life. I won't see that aggressive CEO Shin anymore. That's all in the past. Shin Xiai brewed a pot of tea for Zhao Tianyu, her expression calm. Now, all I want is to be a good husband and a good father in the future. In autumn, Anran gave birth to a healthy baby girl. The child was very healthy, with eyes like Anran's, bright and watery, and a mouth like Chinsi's, with slightly upturned corners, as if she was always smiling. Holding the tiny, soft life in his arms, Shinsiai was filled with an indescribable emotion. Looking into the child's clear, innocent eyes, he seemed to see the cycle of life and hope. All love, hate, and grudges, all wealth and glory, became insignificant at this moment. Only the blood ties before him were truly real. He named his child Chen Yanan. What you keep in mind will surely come to pass. May he enjoy a lifetime of peace and happiness, and be safe and sound year after year. On the day of the delivery, Lin Qian sent a small gold lock through someone. It was unsigned, but Shin Xiai knew it was from her. He didn't refuse and put the lock around Yanan's neck. The grudges were settled, and he didn't want his child to bear the hatred of the previous generation. Time flies, and in the blink of an eye, Shin Yanan is already 3 years old. She is a lively and lovely child who loves chasing the waves on the beach and digging in the sand with her little shovel. Every evening, as the sun sets, Shinsiai holds Yan's hand, and Ran takes Shinsi's arm. The 3 of them stroll on the golden beach, leaving a long trail of footprints behind them. That day, Shinsiai received a letter from Switzerland. It was from Uncle Zhou, who said that Zhou Mingxian had seen photos of Shinsi's family and was very pleased, saying the child looked a lot like him when he was a child. Enclosed with the letter was a trust fund document, established in Shin Yanan's name, with a substantial amount sufficient to guarantee her a worry-free life. Shinsiai stared at the back of his father, whom he had never met. In the photograph, feeling no emotion, he carefully put the letter and documents away, placing them in the deepest part of the drawer. "Dad, look, seagulls," Yanan shouted happily, pointing to the sky. Shinsiai lowered his head and ruffled his daughter's hair. "Yes, those are seagulls going home." He looked up into the distance, where the sea met the sky. There, once lay his ambition, his revenge, and his confusion. Now, there was only his home, his peace, and his entire world. He gripped Ran's hand tightly, feeling the warmth of her palm. In his life, he had once possessed the power to turn the world upside down and the wealth to rival that of a nation. But in the end, he discovered that the most precious things were nothing more than holding hands in the sunset and hearing the clear laughter of his child beside him. "Time to go home for dinner." Anran smiled and tugged at his hand. "Okay, let's go home," Shinsiai replied, a warm and genuine smile appearing on his face. The waves lapped against the beach, whispering softly, as if telling a long story of letting go, redemption, and rebirth. And this story continues, long and long, year after year.